Hey everybody, how you doing?
Hey, it's Jenna.
And I'm Bob.
And we're finally back.
Yeah, sorry for the hiatus last time.
Yeah, sorry.
We had a very busy week.
We did.
We're very busy people.
Yeah.
So we apologize.
10,000 meetings that I didn't want to be at.
But, work gets that way. Work is insane.
Yeah.
So we apologize.
Yes,
especially to our subscribers.
Yes.
Who, we were like, oh, it's a great deal. It's 50 cents an hour or something, but not if we skip 2 hours in the month. So we apologize. We're going to make it up for you this week with a really good show.
Yes. We've got a good lineup here.
We've got all kinds of stuff going on this week. We've got lots of stuff coming at you. So we're all about it. Yes.
And we have a brand new spanking thing with lots of knobs on it.
Yes, we do. You've been like twiddling my knobs.
I've been twiddling the knobs.
Yeah, twiddling knobs. It's underrated, twiddling knobs. I know. We do. We have, thanks to our subscribers and donators, we have a new DBX 1066 compressor limiter gate.
Yay.
People should be cheering now. If you don't know what that is, just cheer, because it means that you're hearing us through that compressor limiter gate, and it's a good thing. And also because of two pretty good donations, we were also able to buy a second piece of equipment called an Aphex 204 oral exciter with optical big bottom.
I thought I was the only big bottom around here.
I was reading the manual, and the manual jokes that you can put the big bottom in your rack if you can get its big bottom through the door.
That's pretty good.
Dirty. So anyway, thanks to subscribers, we still have some more equipment we need to purchase, but you are hearing us now on some new equipment. So this has helped us a lot, and we've got a little bit of a technical change in the show this week that's streamlining things a little, and so if we're a little jerky here and there, you know why.
Yeah, we're still playing.
We're still working on it. All right, we have a lot. First off, we need to thank all of our donators. It's difficult to thank all of them individually.
Yes, we got quite a few, so we were so very happy at your generosity. So thank you so much.
Yes, your generosity, it means so much to us, and we really appreciate it. And without your help, we wouldn't be able to do the show as we do.
No.
So it means so much to us, and we really appreciate that. Also, we have shout outs to donators who decided to donate particular amounts of money rather than to go with a subscription plan. Mm-hmm. And we'll take your money regardless of how you want to give it to us. And even if you want to, put some cash in the mail, that's cool too.
Yeah.
So we gotta get through these shout outs kind of fast. Is that cool?
Cool.
Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got one fairly generous donation, quite generous donation from an anonymous benefactor, and that donation pushed us over the edge into our second piece of equipment. So thank you to that anonymous benefactor, who I wish I could name.
I know, because we named our piece of equipment after you.
We did.
But we'll know.
But we know. So from now on, we just call it
the anonymous benefactor.
Yeah.
Big bottom.
We'll rub the big bottom for you, baby. All right. We also need to thank Brooke, who is Texas Cat Chick on the forums, for her generous donation as well. Thank you for that, Brooke. Brooke's donation actually pushed us over into the realm to get the 1066.
All right.
So I feel like NPR.
Yeah.
We'll get through these quick. Sherbs wrote to complain that she never got her anonymous shout out. No offense. I thought it was really funny. So here's your anonymous shout out. I was like, how would you know? We do anonymous shout outs all the time. Yeah. How would you know if it was for you or not? But sorry. So here's your anonymous shout out. We need to thank Jackson from the chat room and forums and all that. And awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And we need to thank Mary in Tempe, Arizona. And we need to thank Elise and Patrick Hartman from New Jersey, who are Vegan Witch and Vegan Jedi.
Yeah, they've got some great stuff on the forums, pictures and all kinds of stuff. And it's kind of funny to go look at. Oh, I probably shouldn't out them like this. Vegan Witch and Vegan Jedi have some really nice pictures on the forums.
But you can't see them unless you're registered.
Yes, you have to register.
And we also have one, Christine from Dallas wanted us to say that she realized that a quick $50 donation was just about the same as $4 per month without the administrative costs. Just my little way of saying thank you for spreading all your freaky vegan love around. Thank you, Christine.
We've got plenty of freaky vegan love to spread, particularly if you're paying us for it. What else do we got? We had another anonymous donator. Mm-hmm. We need to thank Sarah at govegan.net. That's Sarah Kramer. Mm-hmm. Sending some cash our way.
Yeah, thank you.
And we need to thank Daniel Wilson, who is pierced in all kinds of places. I admire your fortitude, my man. I admire it. So we also need to thank our initial banner ad people, because we are now giving people the option of putting up banner ads on the site, on the podcast.veganfreak.com site. And our first 3 banner ad buyers were Food Fight Grocery, Cosmos Vegan Shop, and Herbivore Magazine. So you should go and give them all of your cash and loving.
Yes.
They all deserve it. They're great businesses, all of them. And we have one final thing that we need to bring in here. And this one was a special request. And I apologize in advance if people are tired of this, but this one was just, well, here it is.
Hey, this is Satan, and I'm doing a shout out for Soy Boy. Soy Boy wants everyone out there to know that vegetable porn is not a crime.
So there you go. That's a little bit of Satan for you. Sorry if the volume on that was a little low, but Satan wants you to know vegetable porn is not a crime.
Indeed.
We'll have more Satan on the show later on.
Excellent.
Yes. So while we're shutting out, sorry to waste almost 6 minutes of your time on this. Let me say that you can, if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can go to our site, podcast.veganfreak.com. There's a little button there on the right. You can subscribe. And for $4 a month, you can help us out a lot.
Yes. And we really appreciate it. And like we said earlier, we still have some equipment to purchase to help streamline our processing here. So
the last piece of equipment is the most expensive one, and it's the one we need kind of the most.
Right.
So that one will require several months worth of podcast, several months worth of subscriber donations at the level that we're at in order to buy this piece. So we really appreciate your support, and please don't unsubscribe if you have subscribed, because we still need the cash.
Yeah. So and we just, again, thank you so much. The generosity has been incredible.
All right, we need to move into the show.
Okay.
Though. And before we do, one other quick, very, very, very quick thing. Remember, it's a new month of Podcast Alley, so if you can't subscribe for some reason, you're too poor or whatever, you can at least go vote for us. That's free.
Yes, it is free,
and that helps us, because we get people who come find the show and then go, you know what? I never really thought about being vegan until I listened to the show.
Yeah.
One person wrote us and said that.
Yeah.
I never thought about veganism until I listened to your show, and now I'm a vegan.
Yeah. So cool.
Totally.
Very cool. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
That's the best compliment you can get.
Yeah. So, right. Did you ever print out that thing for the shack?
No, I didn't. I'm an idiot.
Oh, motherfucker.
We can post it on the website.
All right. That's what we'll do.
Okay.
We were only going to talk briefly about this issue, but many of you have probably heard by now that the Shack 7 or 6, as it is, were convicted of the charges they were on. We're not going to talk a ton about it, just to say that Josh Harper and Kevin are still in jail. The others have been released into the custody, I think, of their families. And they're going to appeal the case. They're going to appeal everything, and they need some support for that. So if you feel like donating to that, you really should think about doing that. And you can find more information on their website, which we'll post in our show notes. We thought we should just update that and also mention that Josh and Kevin are looking for some letters, So remember that any letters you send them are read by prison authorities. And so, you probably don't want anything, incredibly crazy. But they're in prison and they don't have much to read. And, they could really use some nice letters. So if you want to write to them, please do. We'll talk more about this at a later time, without a doubt.
Yep.
Okay.
All
so
right.
You had something you want to talk about?
Yeah. Something that came up in the news and actually related to something that we talked about, I guess now it's a couple weeks ago on our podcast, about early humans and what they used to eat. And there's actually a new book called, which I haven't read yet. I haven't even gotten yet. It's called Man the Hunted: Primates, Predators, and Human Evolution. And someone on, it's actually Herbivore's new blog. It's like a joint blog. There's a bunch of people that post there. And someone posted this, and I can't remember who, Brandy? I don't remember. Anyway, posted this link to an article on Discovery Channel. And this one says, early humans were often eaten. Which I think is great. That's just a great title.
And they don't mean it in a fun way.
No. Short, peaceful, and mostly fruit-eating early humans were preyed upon by predators that included wild dogs and cats, hyenas, eagles, and crocodiles, according to a new book called Man the Hunted: Primates, Predators, and Human Evolution. They presented this recently in American Association for the Advancement of Science's annual meeting. And the theory runs counter to the belief that most people have that our early human ancestors were hunters with a killer instinct. Okay, so instead we were the hunted, not the hunters. And in fact, and I'm sure it says this in somewhere, but I remember reading a blurb about the book, and that's actually how they think we came to have communities and develop all the things that we developed, not by being hunters, but by being hunted. And developing that thing. So it's really
So communities arose as a cooperative strategy to prevent being hunted.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they go on to say, even the invention of stone tools approximately 2.3 million years ago did not alter the playing field. It says that, first it says that the authors argue that our ancestors from around 7 million years ago until about 500,000 to 60,000 years ago huddled together defensively in groups to avoid becoming predatory beasts' dinner. There's the food chain for you.
Yeah.
Even the invention of stone tools approximately 2.3 million years ago did not alter the playing field much, according to the authors.
But couldn't somebody like a knucklehead use this to go, well, you see, we finally won the battle with the animals because we can like kill them. Don't you think someone's going to say that now? Like,
Yeah, but I think they answer that later on. But they also have a funny point in here that the scientists analyzed primate fossils and determined that 9 to 10% show evidence of death from predation. This evidence includes teeth marks on bones, claw marks on skulls, and most dramatically, holes in early human head into which saber-toothed tiger cat fangs fit. So we get eaten by kitties.
Yeah. They're hardly kitties. They're really big kitties. Yeah.
Really big kitties.
I hate when people always ask me, oh, you're an animal rights activist. You believe in animal rights. What if a tiger was killing you? What do you mean, what if a tiger was killing me? I mean, obviously, I would fight it off. But we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
We know where this stands. So,
yeah, but he said that later on, they do address this. He said later on that one of the other things, humans became more predatory when Homo sapiens.
He was a homosexual, as you might recall.
Yeah, homosexual. Homo erectus, with its larger brain, emerged about 2 million years ago. Sussman admits that although humans evolved to be peaceful, cooperative, and social animals, a lot has changed in our recent history. Once hunting began, humans were able to capture more and more prey. He said, in my opinion, just as today, humans can now control their environment, but cannot always understand the consequences of their behavior.
Interesting.
Interesting, isn't it?
If I recall correctly, there's a sociologist, I think by the name of Norbert Elias, who had this original theory about the way in which society evolved. And one of the reasons that he argued that society evolved was for cooperative, kind of making a go of it as a group in an increasingly difficult world to live in.
Mm-hmm.
So his theory, this Elias, I think he's a German, meshes pretty well with this idea that you're just talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and there are linguists too that try and figure out how did language come about, and it certainly came from these sorts of gatherings that need to communicate for some reason, and apparently it could be linked very easily with the chance to avoid prey. I mean, that's why a lot of primates now they have specific voices for different kinds of prey. Yeah.
Sorry, couldn't help it. Going monkey here on it.
So yeah.
So
that's really interesting. And I can't wait to read that book, actually. And I need to get a copy of it.
Have you ordered it yet?
No. It's on my wish list on Amazon.
On your wish list.
I said I wouldn't buy books for a couple months because I bought a bunch of books last month.
Yeah, I have a bunch of books, too.
I'm still reading. So.
Yeah, I got a bunch of books from AK Press, actually. They have this really cool thing, the Friends of AK, where you can pay $20 a month, and they send you all of their new releases as they come out for free.
Nice.
So we get all of the new AK Press releases, like everything on anarchism and all kinds of lefty stuff. And AK does a really nice job distributing our book as well.
Yes,
they've sold a lot of books for us.
Yes, we appreciate that.
We do. So books, good stuff.
Yeah.
I was forwarded a neat little news story.
Yeah.
I don't know if the person who sent it to me wants me to out them as the person who sent this or not. But I don't know. Animal Friendly Life sent it to me. So you probably didn't hear that. It was too fast. And you can't rewind anyway. It's a podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got this email about how stockholders are irked by Whole Foods' stance on presentations. And the article is out of Market Watch, which, as you probably would imagine, I don't read very often,
Yeah.
Which is related to Dow Jones. And the article begins by saying, with its focus on natural and organic foods and giving back to the community, Whole Foods Market, stock exchange WFMI symbol, has developed a reputation as a green progressive company. How it conducts its annual meetings is another story. In recent days, the company has irked so-called socially responsible investors with a warning that they can't formally present shareholder resolutions during Monday's annual meeting. So this means that the shareholders can't come forward and present resolutions. But my understanding from my very basic schooling and this stuff is that this is fairly standard operating procedure, right? For shareholder meetings, is that folks can come forward and bring resolutions, right? So basically what happens is that Whole Foods has kind of pushed some of this stuff off, and it says that basically what happens is that ballot item discussions go into the Q&A period, and that really they don't get the significance they deserve. And the article goes on to say that what also has some securities lawyers baffled is that Whole Foods policy seems to be out of sync with federal securities regulations. Under the Securities and Exchange Commission's proxy rules, the proponent of a shareholder proposal or a representative must attend the meeting to present the proposal. Con Hitchcock, a Washington lawyer who often represents shareholder activists, has witnessed firsthand the difficulty getting the floor during Whole Foods' post-meeting question and answer period, at least for animal rights advocates. Hitchcock was on hand to present a proposal for a client in 2003 and watched as company officials walked to the back of the room for coffee as a member of the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals spoke. Hitchcock also was surprised by the company's policy given its quote-unquote counterculture reputation going back to its early days as a fledgling natural foods market in the Texas college town back in the early 1980s. Glasnost has not yet come to Whole Foods, he said. So apparently, Whole Foods is more than happy to blow off shareholder resolutions if they have anything to do with animal rights. As I've been telling you all along, this animal rights stuff, they don't fucking care. They don't care about it, right? To them, it is, and I'm like vibrating now.
Yeah.
I think this means a sell. This means a sell on Whole Foods. Sell. Okay, so no, but my point is that I've argued all along that for Whole Foods, the animal rights question is a marketing one, and what clearer evidence can we have coming from the capitalists themselves, who will not even allow what blue chip companies, the nasty capitalist bastards of the world allow. Here we go. And
even the nasty capitalist bastards are surprised by this, which is the kind of the shocking thing.
Indeed, it is shocking.
I mean, this is from Market Watch. This isn't from,
And, there's another thing in here. It says, as news spread among activists in governance and social investing circles, though, investors questions whether they were being muzzled. So some people are accusing Whole Foods of muzzling them. In addition, Whole Foods also has a sketchy history when it comes to labor unions, and John Mackey is an unapologetic free marketeer, according to his blog. So I don't know. I'm done picking on Whole Foods, but someone sent that to me, and I thought it was worth looking at. If Whole Foods is all you have near where you live, I understand. That's what you have to do. If that's all I had, that's probably where I would shop, right? Rather than, you know what? I probably wouldn't shop there. But whatever, right? I understand, if that's what your thing is. But I just think, we should be informed. We should know what we're doing.
We should be informed. I mean, that's why people don't shop at Walmart, right?
So that's why some people don't shop at Walmart.
Right.
So. Okay. So that's a rant and rave. Whoa. Oops.
Hitting the mic stand. Okay.
See, I'm all ranting and raving, and my hands are flailing.
That's why you need a smooth reggae song.
That's why. That's why we need some reggae beats. Is it?
Some reggae beats. This song was sent to us by Rococo Loco.
That's right.
And I have no idea how to pronounce the artist's name.
Yeah, well, the song is called No Meat.
Yeah.
And it's off the album Argument. And I imagine the artist's name is Ja Bata. I don't know. Bata. Fuck if I know. I hate reggae. But this actually is pretty good. Yeah. So
at least chill you out.
Do you remember when we had Chad on the show from Food Fight Grocery? We talked about how much we disliked reggae.
Yeah, that's right.
That was fun. No, but here is a little bit of reggae for you to kind of smooth you over here.
Now this was a special request to all the people in Midtown about it, sweet. Chill about it. Tell them we're it, one. Say that to me, turn out something you pay it, Lord. Say that to me, turn out something you pay it, tell them. Say that to me, turn out something you pay it, one. Say that to me, turn out something you pay it. Cause if you eat cow meat, might as well eat dog meat. And if you eat goat meat, might as well eat dog meat. It's a meat, turn out something you pay it. And me say meat, turn out something you pay it. Cause some of them a talk about how it's so sweet, Lord. Cause some of them a talk about how it's so sweet, eh. But tell me live for me vegetable, Lord. Me say me live for me vegetable, Lord. Cause say the veggie on the table. He said the veggie on the table. He said cook it, eat it, buy it, cook it, eat it, buy it, Lord. I said that meat, I know something you pay it, one. I said that meat, I know something you pay it. Me say a meat, I know something you pay it. But some of them a talk about, them not gon' buy it. But yet still a money, them can go and buy it. And when you take a stock, them fridge a full up by it. And 9 days after it still in a it. But every morning me get my fresh vegetable. Jaman, me say me get it on the teeth. Say the meat and no something you fi eat. Me say the meat and no something you fi eat. One, me say them bring it on the scene. Alright, I'm coming. Them bring it on the scene. Say it a full of protein. You fi ride and you fi ride and come in. Jackie, I say you ride and you fi ride and come in. Lord, because me slim, me chin, me say me no fi ride with them. Me slim, me chin, me say me no fi ride with them. Me flash it in a A, me flash it in a B, me flash it in a all kind of a style. In case you never know me, say me name Poopa me. Say that meat and no something you fi eat. Tell them, say meat and no something you fi eat. One, come me say meat and no something you fi eat. Do it, come me say meat and no something you fi eat. Lord, cause if you eat cow meat, might as well eat dog meat. You eat goat meat, might as well eat dog meat. Say that meat and no something you fi eat. Lord, come me say meat and no something you fi eat. Me say me live for me vegetable. Lord, me say me live for me vegetable. Right, me say I feel me vegetable. It's a ice gold and green. Me beetroot, me ackee and me carrot and me green. Say that meat and no something you fi eat. One, me say that meat and no something you fi eat. Me say that some of them a talk about them not gon' buy it, but yet still them fridge it full up by it. Them go a supermarket and pick up by it, and 9 days after it still in a it. Say that meat and no something you fi eat, Lord. I said that meat and no something you fi eat. One, me say fi eat up your vegetable. Me say fi eat up your vegetable. Cause me say veggie on the table. Me say that vegetable table, Lord. Cause me say veggie on the table, Lord. Cause me say veggie on the table, Lord. Say that a meat and no something you fi eat. One, cause say that meat and no something you fi eat, Lord. Me say a meat and no something you fi eat. Me say that meat and no something you fi eat.
All right, so thanks for Coco Loco for sending that to us. That reggae wasn't bad.
Not at all.
I liked it.
I thought it kind of sounded like you said no meat under your feet or something. No meat under your... Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, actually, the problem I have with reggae is that it's been co-opted by frat boys.
Yeah, that's my problem with it. Frat boys like nothing. Sorry, I had to get that in there. Yeah, the frat boys seem to really like reggae.
Yeah, you always hear it like blasting from their houses. It's really annoying.
It's weird though. Like, why would upper middle class or upper class white kids who drive Jeeps be into reggae?
I don't know. It doesn't have anything to do with what reggae's about.
I don't really know. It's like, Irie, man, I'm feeling the, anti-Babylon, I'm feeling against Babylon. I'm all about Zion, man. It's like, what? These guys, the dog's named Irie and stuff, It's like a little... Whatever, though.
Whatever you're into.
Who am I to criticize? Because I'm sure that somewhere out there, someone's listening, and I'm going to get a nasty email about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We get nasty emails about just everything we do.
We do.
Although I have to say the good ones outweigh the bad ones. Yes, they do. Fortunately, because there are times when you get these nasty emails, you're like, huh? Like what? Like, we get ones. Thankfully, the emails we get about our cursing have kind of trailed off a little bit. They have. Now we get them, though, about other bits of our language.
Yeah.
Someone wrote to us recently about using the term redneck. They didn't like that. Another person wrote to us before because someone used the term retard on the podcast and they didn't like that. It wasn't even us. Mm-mm. It was someone who was in a voicemail or something, said retard. Yeah. And, that's not the nicest word around, right?
No.
But I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to talk briefly about, I've been thinking a lot lately about this whole issue of kind of how to appeal to people,
Mm-hmm. Because
I went back and reread Meat Market for my animal rights class.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what Meat Market is about is really effective activism. The question that drives Eric Marcus's book is one of how can we be the most effective possible vegan activists we can be, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you have this how can you do this in your life and be effective? How can you do it in terms of outreach and be effective and things like that? And while some of his conclusions I don't necessarily agree with, some I do,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is I got thinking about his book a lot, and it made me think, like, I originally used to think that sentimentality was not a very good way to get people to think about veganism,
Mm-hmm.
But I was really naive because that was really, it was not a good way to get me to think about veganism. So I made this assumption like, self-centered prick that I am, the whole world is like Bob, and therefore the whole world will not appeal to the sentimentality will not appeal to the whole world. That was kind of idiotic of me because I thought about it, and in doing my animal rights class this semester, I found that actually taking the sentimental route really works for a lot of people. It's something that's worth exploring, and also in doing some reading. I've recently been reading The Lives of Animals by God, what is that author's name? Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
The guy who didn't he win the Booker Prize? He wrote Disgrace.
Oh, Coetzee.
Yeah, him.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I was reading The Lives of Animals, which is essentially this. He was invited to give a lecture at Princeton, and so he wrote a story about a woman who was invited to give a lecture at Appleton College, and he used the story. He read the story as his lecture. So he read a story about someone giving a lecture, which is really funny. And his lecture was about animal issues, and it did a comparison between the consumption of animals and their slaughter and the Holocaust. And anyway, part of that got me thinking about this whole issue of sentiment. And I was also reading this other book called Frontiers of Justice by Martha Nussbaum, doing this as research for a book that I'm working on. And I think together these two books had me really thinking about this issue of like, okay, I think it's worth exploring human sentiment, thinking about the ways in which we can not be sloppy and maudlin, but the ways in which we can really use sentiment, the ways in which we can help people identify with animals and with farm animals,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that The Lives of Animals brings up is that people who, basically what allowed the Holocaust to go on essentially was that people were unwilling to put themselves in the shoes of the people who were being exterminated,
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, so many of us are unwilling or unable to put ourselves into the shoes of the people, well, not the people, the animals that are being destroyed for our palates, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what's the best way? And I'm kind of opening this up a little bit to everyone out there because I don't know. What do you think the best way to do this is? I think that this isn't, the only tactic. I just think it's one tactic, and I'm wondering what is an effective way to get people to kind of feel it, to see it, to understand it. And I don't even mean talking about the Holocaust because that's immediately kind of charged, right?
Yeah, very.
But I mean, just in getting people to think about, to have sympathy, to think, or to actually to empathize with animals, right? To understand that position, that place, and to get them there. So I'm wondering about that.
That's a huge question. Though, because it's in doing that, in all these situations, you're creating an other, and it's been the question throughout. Trying to do things about racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. How to get people not to other that other person, how to realize you actually have more in common with that other, group that you're trying to distance yourself from, and how to realize that we actually have more in common. And I think that's I think that's one of the important things that you have to make the connection with animals, non-human animals, is that we actually, have so much in common, and that even though they can't talk, even though they can't reason in the same ways that we can.
And they can't cry.
No.
No tears.
No tears.
Anyway, yeah.
Right. But you can tell they still feel pain. They still suffer.
Yeah.
They still feel joy. You can tell when they're happy. Anyone who has a dog or a cat can tell, when they're happy, when they're upset, when they're sad, when they want something. They control us half the time because they tell us what they want and we do it for them,
Yeah.
And I think we just need, so we have this other category of animals called food. We're going to need to make the connection that we still have a lot in common with them, even though we put them in this very distant category. We make other people do horrible things to them for us.
The other thing that's really interesting about it is that we talk about this in my class too, is that when you see pictures of animals, they always look like they're kind of inviting consumption, You see pigs happily marching off to slaughter, and you see these animals that look like they're just thrilled to be jumping onto your plate. And that's in fact a load of crap.
Yeah, well, Carol Adams talks about that in her books, of course, making the connection with all the ads that do that for animals, make them look like they want to be consumed, and all the animal, and a lot of ads that involve women that do the same thing, like the women want to be consumed, of course, in a different way.
The pornography of meat does that really well.
Yes.
There's tons of pictures in there. And her slideshow does that really well too.
Yeah, her slideshow is really effective.
So I guess the point that you raised though is that it's a bigger question than just simply about animals. It's simply a question of how do you get people to think about othering and oppression in really important and vital ways.
We have to make the connection, I think, between I mean, because people do it to other humans too.
I know.
I mean, that's how people can sit in somewhere in some plane and bomb other people and not put themselves in their shoes, you know?
Well, that same process of removal is there, though, right?
Exactly.
A plane flies over some Iraqi village, and you don't think, well, there are people down there. No, it's just like this removal. It's a button you push.
Right, and boom.
There's the green thing that blows up on the screen. Just like when you walk into the grocery store and you buy your styrofoam wrapped meat, you don't think, well, there's a cow behind this.
Right. Or you're even further removed, you're sitting at home and you're watching on CNN someone pressing the button and going boom and it's all green and whatever, you know. So we were very removed from that. And actually we talk about that in an interview that's coming up the last part of our show.
That's right. So that's partially why I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
But, I think that there are a number of different ways that the movement needs to react. I think that, we need to think about what the most appropriate ways to reach people are and use those.
I agree.
So I guess I was just kind of kicking this idea around because I always think about this when I have my students in class, and I inevitably have some students that are very, recalcitrant. They're really like resistant to the whole idea,
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, how we watch Earthlings, we watch these films, we read these books.
Mm-hmm.
It is abundantly clear that, the exploitation that we're talking about isn't some kind of anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
It's the norm.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how do we create these connections? And to me, it's the power of culture. It's the power of how we grow up and what we understand, what we learn. And, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
And if we could just get that idea out of people's heads.
Yeah. Well, I think when you go back to your original point about, appealing to sentiment, I think that's really important because I think a movie like Peaceable Kingdom does that really well.
It does.
I mean, just the whole story with, was it Farmer Brown? That tells, was that his name?
Yeah, Harold Brown.
Yeah, Harold Brown. He tells the story of, he used to work on a dairy farm.
That's right.
And just the story of him coming up to the cow and the cow bumping him in the chest with her head.
Well, that was what happened to him at the farm sanctuary.
Yeah,
right?
the farm sanctuary, and then he just breaking down into tears because this cow was connecting with him, and he just felt this rush of sentiment after all these horrible these years of doing horrible things to animals. And I think that connection, if you can make it, is so important. And then our dog helped me do that, helped me realize and our cat together helped me realize that, oh my, these animals save these lives that we can't discount. And I certainly, films like Peaceable Kingdom and The Witness certainly appeal to me, to my sentimental side.
To me too. I mean, though I kind of like The Witness better though. I like The Witness better because I think its activism is a little weaker in terms of what it advocates for, because people leave that film and think fur is evil. They don't think meat is evil.
True.
Right. But more often than not, I like that film better because in a way it explains the rational process behind someone who went vegan, right? And for me, it was an extremely rational process. It was partially sentimental and partially, about empathy for others. But it was also a process of me rationally understanding that, okay, here's a creature that has harm. My desire is not to cause harm. If that is my desire, this is what I must do. Not many people approach it. Not everybody approaches it that way.
No.
And that's okay.
And I think even it's important to know that sentimentality might get you in the door, and then logic might keep you there.
True.
So I mean, I think sometimes a combination of approaches can work too. So
absolutely.
You got to keep going. People need to keep realizing that these things, because I think people, if they get into the habit of veganism, can forget why they became vegan in the first place. So I think it's important to remind yourself.
That's why every so often I go back and read, or I try to read the newer books that come out, because they remind me and they kind of empower me. Not empower me, I mean, that's not the right word, but they kind of energize me. They get me thinking about what's going on out there and why I need to keep doing what I'm doing. And, there are times that, I'm tired. I don't feel like maintaining the forums. I don't feel like, doing the podcast. I don't feel like doing certain things, but I actually feel like this stuff is important. And I don't want to say that we're like, incredibly important or anything, because we're not, but this is where I feel like my talents are. That's what I feel like I can do. And that's why I keep reading this stuff, and it keeps reminding me that that's why I got to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yep.
Eric Marcus makes a point in his book that, each person, he looks at it very much in a numerically oriented way, right? He says, like, each person prevents the consumption of something like 2,000 animals, So if you can help spread that around, right? You convince someone else, and they convince somebody else, and they convince somebody else, that it can reduce the number of animals consumed, even though there's still this kind of massive system out there killing animals. So, yeah, it feels overwhelming sometimes. But I remember the words of Karen Davis, who was on last week.
Yeah, again.
Sorry about that.
Rerun.
Who was on last week. We won't do the rerun very often.
No.
And well, they aren't really her words, right? They're Gramsci's words, Antonio Gramsci. And Gramsci, I think, what was it? Pessimism. I always screw this up. Optimism. No, pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Yep.
Sometimes I get them mixed up. Doesn't work quite so well. So anyway, yeah, I think we need to think about that. I think if you have ideas about this, I'd love to hear them. And call us or email us.
Yeah.
We actually could use more voicemails now.
Yes.
We are
finally catching up on.
We're catching up on our queue. So if you would like to call in with voicemails, we'd love to hear from you at 267-295-1944. And with that, I think what we should probably do is move on to
emails.
Okay, so who's our first email from?
Well, we've got kind of a long email from Jeremy. And Jeremy writes, I'm a college student and loyal listener for about 2 months now. I recently went vegan while on winter break in New York City, where it's pretty easy to get good food. I'm now on a study abroad program in Scotland. Unlike your caller last week, or a couple weeks ago really, I am living in an apartment with very cool, respectful roommates, and I cook my own food.
Cool.
I found some great vegan recipes online this weekend, and I'm in heaven. My Omni roommate loves my baked goods as well. Although I've had to order some cooking ingredients online, it's easy to get basic stuff in the supermarket in town. While far from perfect, the food labeling system here is much better than in the States. There's no standard vegan stamp, but every vegetarian product contains a prominently displayed V with the words suitable for vegetarians. That must be nice. Any dairy products must be listed as an allergy warning, along with nuts, soy, and other common allergens. Of course, I still read the labels for GMO and such, but it's not hard. I usually have no problem finding decent quick stuff when I'm out, but just as in the States, it's much more difficult eating in restaurants. I feel strongly, though, that eating out is very important because it helps spread the word about veganism through company and restaurant employees, and ultimately makes veganism a little bit more mainstream. If more people knew normal, healthy, polite vegans, there would be a more positive view of veganism in society. Seeing us at the dinner table helps omnivores learn about our lifestyle, and if they are open-minded, they will come away with positive thoughts about veganism.
Indeed.
Yeah. If they are closed-minded jerks, they will get defensive and arrogant, and then everyone else's attention focuses on the jerks. The vegan is suddenly not weird anymore. And of course, more vegans eating out eventually means more restaurants accommodating vegan with new menu items. This is one small way you can really make a difference for all those non-believers out there. It's a really good point.
So just live your life happily and prove that you're fine.
Exactly.
Because I think people want to assume that you're in fact miserable for being vegan.
They do. They think we're all deprived and absolutely craving meat and cheese and everything all the time.
Yeah, I mean, people always ask me, isn't it hard? And it's not hard.
No, not at all. It's not.
Well, not for me. I mean, for some people it is.
Yeah, it's not hard in the slightest. I don't know.
Well, at first, for some people, it is difficult.
Yeah.
In their defense.
True.
But I don't really miss that stuff anymore.
No, me either.
No.
So, yeah, so definitely a good example, I think, goes a really long way into promoting veganism.
Right, because they want to, like I said, they want to view us as miserable. They want to affirm all of their worst beliefs about us. And if we act like these like pissed off, miserable people all the time, well, then, of course, it's going to affirm that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, the other email.
Wait, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One more easy question first.
You don't have to yell at me.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
He goes on to say, the one issue I've really had trouble with is finding inexpensive non-food items since I am on a budget. In New York City, you can buy a leather wallet on the street for $5. I've looked online and everything costs at least 5 times that plus shipping. I'm in a crisis now because the money in the UK is much wider than US dollars, so it doesn't even really fit in my old leather wallet. I was hoping you could offer some advice and recommendations for where to find inexpensive clothing, accessories, etc. I could probably get some secondhand stuff online, but the more vegan stuff I have, the more publicity I can do. Every little bit helps. Thanks.
You know, Ranting Steve was making wallets.
That's right.
He was making them from scratch, and I think he could probably make one to size to fit the euro money.
Yeah, the pound. Actually.
The pound
would be.
Are you okay?
Yeah. Sorry.
Good. Fit one to make. Yeah, I know. Of course. I know the UK isn't on the pound. Before everybody yells at me, before I get the nasty emails, I know. So anyway, yeah.
But yeah, he probably could.
He could indeed. That was on our forums, so you can log on our forums. And I remember them being really inexpensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
so,
else?
Yeah. So, or you could make your own wallet. But I mean, I know that sometimes you can get really cheap leather goods, but you can also find like really cheap knockoff leather goods that are like cheap fake leather. Can't you?
I don't know.
I mean, at places like, well, here in the States, you go for shoes, you would go to places like Payless. I mean, and those kind of places, and with the disclaimer that, yes, they're not great for human labor because they're usually from sweatshops, the shoes that you buy there. But if you're looking for cheap, and new, you can usually find things and bags and wallets and the like there. But I would imagine thrift stores are a good way to go anywhere you are.
Yeah, I would think so. You probably find some pretty good stuff in thrift stores.
You can, I mean, some online you can find. I mean, it'd probably be cheaper once you get back to the States. Because I know there are a lot here that are easy. But there's got to be something. I mean, or maybe Rat and Cat could help us out.
Well, they're not in Scotland.
But they're in the UK, and it's shipping cheaper from the.
That's true.
Shipping is cheaper, is what I'm trying to say.
Shipping is cheaper?
Yes. From the rest of the UK than from the States.
Yeah, that's true. So I don't really know. Maybe we have some folks in Scotland out there.
Maybe. I don't know.
Wait, come on. We have to have somebody out there.
I'm sure. I know we have a couple people from Ireland, which I know is not the same thing. But if we have people from Ireland, we have people from England, we've got to have people from Scotland.
There's got to be someone out there from Scotland. Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, get in touch with us if you have any advice on where to get good vegan goods in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can keep your vegan haggis to yourself. Thank you very much. So cool. Well, it's nice to hear from you. Nice to know you're in a good apartment there and able to sort everything out you need sorted.
Oh, I know there's people on our forums that used to live in Scotland.
Okay.
Coco Kate, I think. So.
Well, there you go. Come on to the forums.
Yeah.
When the forums aren't exploding with hatred, they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
And when people aren't telling us that we're being fuck-ups, they're fine. Okay, next email is from James McHugh. James was commenting with regard to our Cherry Pot is Vegan Meat Mayor's interview with Dan and Liz of Liz Lovely podcast, and he said, just heard the comments, questions about being a man and being vegan. I have and continue to encounter lame-ass comments and weak resistance from friends and family members about becoming vegan. In my relationship, I was the one who decided to become vegan, and my fiance followed suit once I made the case. Still to this day, I get people asking me if it was really Amber that, quote-unquote, made me go vegan. I also end up reiterating to them that no one can make me change my mind about something like that. They even go as far as to question whether or not I'm whipped, and I calmly explain that with me being 6 feet 4 inches tall and 230 pounds, they are the only ones who risk being whipped, and by a weak vegan at that, which is usually followed by a I was just kidding on their part and a smile on mine, as I really resort to violence to get my point across. But that is what most of the guys that ask this question relate to, being tough and kicking ass. And that's from James. So,
that's awesome.
That's pretty funny. It's like, you talking to me? You know,
Yeah.
that doesn't work for me. I can't be like, yeah, I'm going to whip you. It doesn't come across like I am not a threatening figure. Although I remember my first year teaching at the university, I made some people cry.
Yeah, well.
But anyway, that was just from class too. I mean, God, ridiculous. Yeah, so we need to, this whole idea that men would never go vegan on their own is just ridiculous.
I know.
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Give us some credit.
I know. Well, the whole stereotype, real men eat meat and hunt. Shoot things like
Dick Cheney.
Like Dick Cheney.
Like you shoot your friends.
Yeah.
Damn, man.
Right.
Dick Cheney was even doing a canned hunt.
Yeah, I know. Well, whatever. Okay, so we move on to voicemails?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's move on to voicemails.
All right.
Time once again for some vegan freak voicemail. Maybe we'll hear from a hot chick
or a choice male.
Callers make us happy and help us keep our sanity, even if all they wanna do is fucking complain about the shitload of profanity.
All right. So, who's our first voicemail from this week?
Our first voicemail is from Kathy and actually ties into the hunting theme a little bit.
Well, then here we go.
Hey, guys. This is Kathy, and I just wanted to throw something out there to you and see what you thought. Recently in my community newspaper, which has a very large circulation, the debate of hunting has come up in the letters to the editor section. And it's been spurred by this whole Dick Cheney issue. And anyway, someone wrote in arguing for hunting, claiming that animals do not suffer when they are hunted, which I found obviously ridiculous. So one of my strengths lie in writing. I'm a fairly good writer, and one of the things I do is like to write to the editor on behalf of animals and other issues that are close to my heart. So I wrote this really fantastic letter, really just making an excellent case against hunting for all the obvious reasons. And the thing is, I sent it in anonymously, and I'm sure it's going to be published because I think it's fairly good. But I don't know, I feel kind of cowardly. But the retaliation against people like myself is just worrisome. And I don't know, I wanted your thoughts about, penning an anonymous letter. I don't know, I'm having mixed feelings about it. Like, maybe I should have put my name out there. Maybe I should have, put myself on the line a little bit more. But I just worry about protecting myself and my family. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts, guys, about anonymity and standing up for what you believe in, but balancing protecting yourself? All right, take care. Love your podcast. You guys rock. Bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you so much.
That's great. It's a tough question.
It is a really tough question.
I feel like any letter out there is a good one.
Oh, yeah. I think the important thing is that the ideas are out there.
I think so too. The important thing is to get the ideas out. If you're not comfortable putting your name on those ideas for the reasons that you stated, it's probably not a good idea to cross people with guns.
Yeah, generally, not a good idea. I mean, that's why we would never put like an anti-hunting stickers on our car around here. We'd probably get shot.
Yeah, we really. Well, I don't think we get shot, but our tires would probably get slashed, and the sticker would probably get scratched out and things like that. So I'm not prepared to do that. So I think that doing it is really commendable. If you don't put your name on it, that's fine if that's what you're comfortable doing. And I think getting that voice out there is important. And if you live in a place where it's dangerous for you to say these things, I think anonymous is completely appropriate. And if that's what you want to do or need to do, and that's how you're comfortable doing it, it's one more voice out there for the animals, even though it isn't one that's attached to someone,
Yeah, and I think it brings up an important point, is that we all have different comfort levels and we all have different strengths in terms of what we want to do. And we need to use those to our advantage. And like Kathy did. And I think it's important. She recognizes that her strength lies in writing letters. And so that's what she does. And that's how she gets her voice out there. And I think it's important to use your strengths and to use your own judgment as to what you want to do.
And I think it's also important. There are times certainly when I think it's worth putting your name on things if you feel like doing it, but I wouldn't let that stop someone from writing and saying what they think is on their mind. And the only hesitation I would have about using, not using your name is that some papers won't publish stuff without your name, and some papers won't call. They can't call you because they don't know who you are, and usually that they have to give you a call to see if they have your permission to run the letter and things like that, spell your name and stuff like that correctly. So some papers won't run anonymous letters at all. I guess it depends on the editorial policy of the paper, but
that's true. I would imagine you should look into that beforehand, or you can send your name and say, please don't use my name. Just please write anonymous.
That's true too. That's true too. And then you have to actually trust that the paper won't fuck up and put your name on it. And a lot of papers, I think. Well, I don't know what they're like, but
true.
Who knows?
Never know.
You never know, exactly. And the person who's doing the editorial page could be a hunter anyway.
True.
Want to have your name out there.
This is true.
So, but I think it's appropriate. I think it's important to do whatever level of activism you're comfortable with. And when I say activism, I think people think like I mean, going and standing in the way of farms or things that would violate the Animal Enterprises Terrorism Act or any of that stuff. I don't mean that. I mean like just simply doing whatever it is in your life that you feel like you can do to help kind of promote the cause, even if it's something really minor.
Yeah, even if it's leaving a leaflet at the library, even if it's talking to your neighbor when they have questions about, all of it we consider activism.
And there are a bunch of ways to do it too. I mean, it's not just a simple thing. It's, it can just be a simple thing. That's what I mean to say. It can be a bunch of different things. So don't forget that. And Kathy, I'm really glad that you're writing in to the paper, and I'm glad that you're having a debate about hunting. And I think there are a lot of people who have some hesitancy about hunting. And animals die fast during hunting that's one of the bigger myths out there. I think it depends on the skill of the marksman.
Yeah.
And if they're like the marksman around here, they're usually drunk.
Yeah.
Many of the hunters around here, I mean, I know from experience from accidentally being in the woods one weekend during the start of hunting season, that there are drunk people in the woods with guns, drinking their mountain comfort and all that stuff, hang out in trees, being with a bunch of other men. Now, why they need guns involved, I don't know. But I don't know. I think here's one of the problems I think we have in America. Okay, maybe in the Western world. I don't really know much about the rest, but in the Western world, I think it's not the whole Western world because we live in Spain. They didn't as much have this problem. I think one of the problems we have is that men can't deal with other men. Like straight men, two straight men can't deal with each other. Not all of them, but many can't deal with each other as like friends. They're afraid to touch one another. They're afraid to get close to each other. So they create these contexts in which it's okay to touch and be near other men. If it means you got to go in the woods with your men friends at like 4 a.m. and spend the weekend in the woods with your men friends, drinking beer, farting, and like hanging out in the woods in your camo, and with your guns up in the tree to be around your men, that's what you do. It's like when I go to the gym. Have I talked about this on the podcast before?
I don't remember.
Well, if I have, I apologize. I only have so many stories. So, you're going to hear, I'm getting old too. Anyway, when I go to the gym, sometimes, I'm sure I've talked about this, but anyway, sometimes I go in and there are these older gentlemen in the gym and they're in the locker room and they're mostly naked. Saggy is an understatement. I mean, we're talking like, women's breasts droop, but men's scrotums also droop.
Gee, thanks for that visual.
It's emblazoned in my mind.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go in the gym and there's older gentlemen in the gym, octogenarians, perhaps, maybe a little younger than that. And they're all standing around. They've got one foot up on the bench in the gym, the other foot on the ground. They're going, and they're like flossing their taints. They've got these towels and they're, hey, Jim, how you doing there? And they're talking to each other like that, going back and forth. The other one's like, yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah. I just bought a new snowblower. Yeah. And they're like rubbing the towel in there and they're talking and I'm putting my shoes on and trying not to see anything out of the corner of my eye. It isn't like I'm afraid of naked male bodies. I'm not. I'm just afraid of like old naked male bodies. Okay. And, look, it isn't like I had the most sexy, gorgeous naked body in the world, but I just, come on. Okay. Anyway, so I'm trying not to look. I get up, I go into the gym, I do my thing, come back an hour and a half later, and the same guys are still there talking about the same shit. There's some other snowblowers and their scrotums and all this other stuff. All right. So this was once. And I went back another time, and another time, and another time, and another time, and they were still doing this every single time. Right. And so I wondered, is this something they do? Are they just leaving, coming in at the same time I am, going and working out and coming back at the same time I'm coming back? So one day I had to go back in I have this little logbook I use. I had to go back and get my little logbook, and they were in there in the middle of the time that I thought they would be out working out. What's my point? I'm going to get there.
Okay.
My point is that I think men sometimes have this difficulty being intimate with other men. And so they create contexts like this gym room where they can be naked around one another. They create contexts like fraternities. They create contexts like hunting in the woods with their male friends so they can be intimate with other men with the pretext of actually doing something. Why can't you just hang out and be intimate? What I want to know is if these naked men who are 80, why can't they just go over to somebody's house and be all naked together and enjoy it? Instead they have to be in a locker room. They have to create this context. The point I'm getting to here, I am actually getting to a point.
Okay.
All right. The point I'm getting to is that hunting is one of these things, and it becomes this pretext where, you prove your manliness by going out in the woods to shoot and shooting stuff. The context, of course, is just being with other men.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
It's clear.
So, sorry.
Okay. We're just getting a little off topic here.
Did I go too far?
No, we're just, ADD podcast.
Well, it's our podcast.
I know.
This is the way we are.
Yeah.
All right. Next voicemail. Check that out.
Hi Bob and Jenna, it's Ian here calling from Australia. Just thought I'd send you a voice message to talk about a couple of issues. Firstly, Bob, a few weeks ago you were talking about the whale vomit, which was found on the beach in South Australia, and I just thought I'd let you know that to the best of my knowledge, it's called ambergris, not ambergris, which is gris being French for grey, I'm assuming. There you go. Can you hear the kookaburra?
Wow. What is that?
It's really cool, whatever it is.
That is so cool. It's like the outback.
There's a nice bit of Australiana for you guys. It's just going dusk in our part of the world. And the most amazing full moon is just coming up over the mountains. It's quite spectacular. And as you can probably hear, there's a lot of noise around. The critters are going wild. Bit like milk gone wild, I guess. That was pretty funny the other night to have a look at that. And I just love Foamy the Squirrel. That was hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. Anyway, back to the issues at hand. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about quickly was biodynamics. You guys, when you talked about it, didn't seem to know too much about it. And I don't know if you've done any more research, but it's not really as bad as I think you guys are making it out to be. For a start, it's a very sustainable form of agriculture. I realise it's not kosher, so to speak, for us vegans in lots of ways. But then again, if you look into most forms of growing things, apart from maybe veganics, which is very, very small scale, to my best of my knowledge, there is some sort of animal cruelty, animal husbandry involved in growing pretty much everything. Many years ago, when I was involved, we used to grow organic veggies ourselves. There was quite a large-scale organic farmer in Melbourne, and his main source of fertility was factory farm chicken manure. And I don't think he even, if I can recall, he didn't even really bother to compost it. So it just pretty much just spread straight on. I know the standards are a lot higher now, but still, any sort of food production, there is factory farmed animals usually involved. That's why I think it's probably a great idea for us vegans to try and grow our own food as much as possible, because every little bit helps as far as I can see, and then we get a better understanding of where the food comes from and what's involved, etc. But maybe that's just dreaming. But yeah, biodynamics. I just feel like I feel a bit like you guys gave it a bit of a bad rap. That's all. And then the other thing I suppose is along those lines too. Is like wheat, which is me being a baker, is a very big part of what I use. Probably the biggest part of what I use. And every wheat farm, to my knowledge, is also a sheep farm. They just sort of, the wheat growers run sheep as well, and that's just the way it is as far as I can see. So, I mean, do we stop eating wheat because there's meat production involved in the process? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, and also back to the biodynamics is another thing. Back when I was growing vegetables, there was a book by some people, a person, I'm not sure if it's a guy or female, called Dale O'Brien. It's called Intensive Gardening. It was an English book from, I think, maybe the 50s or the 60s. And they had a veganic composting system. They used no animal products whatsoever. And there's a guy in America called Elliot Coleman. Now, I did a course with him quite a few years, probably 13 or so years ago. And he's a fascinating guy. He's done heaps of research. His book's called The New Organic Grower, and it's anyone interested in growing food, it's probably the best book that I've ever seen. He's basically researched every growing technique throughout Europe and other countries in America, and he's found all these amazing small-scale sort of tools, basically, for producing vegetables. And yeah, it's just quite an excellent publication if you're into that sort of thing. Elliot, he's actually come down in favour through his research as using an all-vegetable compost as well, with a few mineral, some rock dust and some rock phosphate, that sort of thing, as additives. But so that's obviously, I guess some of the organic growers have sort of taken a lot of the stuff that he's researched and are going on with it. So, but I guess it'd be a great maybe a great subject for one of your interviews in the up and coming time, is to interview a veganic grower, so we can all get a bit of insight into how they go about it and what's involved. Because as I said before, I mean, we need to know where our food's coming from, and just buying organic, we're out there supporting, the animal industries, I guess. And I think it's just that's just another idea for maybe a podcast in the future. But I think that's probably about it for now. I'll take care, and we'll catch you later. Ciao.
All right. Wow.
It was so cool to hear the sounds of Australia.
It was. And thanks for that, Ian. Ian and his family are one of the bigger supporters of our podcast.
Yeah.
They are in touch with us all the time, sending us great stuff, music, graphics. Ian did a really cool little movie for us that is on our vodcast feed. And they send us some really nice emails on occasion. It's just really nice to know we have support from down under.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's cool. We've got a lot of folks in Australia who are listening, and it's so nice to hear from them. Also, Ian mentioned that he's a baker. If you go to our forums and sign on, Ian has some pictures of his bread in his ovens, and they've got he and his wife have brick ovens, wood-fired brick ovens, and they're just amazing. And the bread, my God, I want to reach through the line and take it. It looks so good.
I know.
And he has this really simple philosophy about bread. So Ian also doesn't have high speed. So he spends 6 to 7 hours downloading our podcast every week.
That's amazing.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
So we owe you, man. We really do. And it's cool because he lets his son listen, and I guess we should cut back on the F words and stuff. No, I think his son's 16, right? Who he lets listen. And his wife, Lindahl, also is listening in, and they sent us a really nice email. So we want to thank them for that while I have their ear for a second. But so many good points in there.
Yeah, definitely. And it is important to remember, like you said, you basically can't get anything grown without some sort of animal product involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, is that, again, veganism isn't really about a purity, right? It's about, I think, doing what you can.
And yeah, the best scenario is veganic gardening, buying from a veganic gardener, or growing your own. So you know exactly what goes into it.
That's a really good point that he had, though, that we should talk to a veganic gardener.
Yeah.
I like that idea a lot.
That would be a really cool idea.
That we should really talk to someone. We should try to find somebody. If there are any veganic gardeners out there, if you're a commercial veganic gardener, or even if you do a little bit of veganic on your own, we'd like to hear from you. It'd be pretty cool. And we're sorry if we short-shrifted biodynamic. We didn't know a ton about it, but
yeah, I mean, for the most part, I did get the idea that it was trying to be a really sustainable form of agriculture, but the whole thing with the cow horn just weirded me out.
Yeah, me too a little, and the intestines and stuff. I found that a little odd.
I mean, not like manure is a whole lot better, but it was just, I don't know.
But you don't have to kill an animal to get manure out of it.
True.
I mean, if there are cows at farm sanctuary that produce manure,
Right.
So
okay.
But you can't get an intestine out of an animal.
But most of the manure that is going into the ground are from animals that are going to be killed.
That's true. That's quite true. So thanks for all those wonderful ideas, Ian. And if any of you have comments on what Ian has talked about, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can call us at 267-295-1944. And what else? Are we done with that? You have any more thing you want to say on there?
No, that's about it.
We've got another quick segment here. This one is from Tofu Punk. And we'll just let her roll. She did this and, sent it to us, and we thought it was kind of cool, so we'll play it for you.
Tofu Punk's Vegan Moment of Zen. In my humble opinion, veganism is not a filthy word, nor is it something to be ashamed of. Earlier this week, I was explaining to a woman I had just met what a vegan is, and recalled hearing stories of other vegans avoiding conversations like these entirely on the basis of being controversial. I find myself explaining to people left and right about why I have chosen to walk the path of veganism, and I use their curiosity as an opportunity to spread my knowledge and perhaps make a difference. While we should certainly support others in our community who participate in larger and louder forms of action, we should also realize that we can make a difference as individuals merely speaking to new people and explaining our reasons for choosing the vegan lifestyle. We must keep in mind that many of us were originally omni, and through education and the information others have provided to us, We have decided to spare the lives of thousands of defenseless animals and refuse to endorse companies which participate in any form of animal cruelty. If you have a bullhorn, more power to you, but you don't require one to be effective. And that's this week's Moment of Zen.
So there we go, the Moment of Zen from Tofu Punk.
Yeah,
so
that's
you for
a really
that.
good point.
It is, and that was one that came up earlier in the email too, where we had, I forget the person's name, I'm sorry, the guy who was in Scotland, Jeremy in Scotland, where he was basically saying a very similar thing, like just by living your day-to-day life as a vegan, getting people to know you, you can really make a difference. And I think Tofu Punk makes a great point.
Definitely.
So there you go.
Yeah, thanks for sending that in.
Absolutely.
267-295.
Isn't this addictive?
It is.
Put the number down on your refrigerator door. Add the 001 country code if you call us from Vienna. That's how you leave a voicemail for good old Bob and Jenna.
So yeah, come on, you got to leave us a voicemail.
Yep. And it should be on your refrigerator door, damn it.
It should. So part of this new setup means we can talk over things now.
Yeah. Which kind of could be dangerous.
We're hesitant to do it, though.
Yeah.
We're both looking at each other like, should we do it? I don't know. Should we? And speaking of our new setup, man, yeah, I really, again, I just want to say thanks to people for helping us.
Yeah,
out.
it's so much better.
It is. It works a lot better for us.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Our voicemails are over now. And we've got now in this second half of the show, basically we have a Cooking with Dino segment. Following that, we're going to play a little bit of music. And then we have our interview with Melanie Joy, who talks about kind of ideology around meat eating. And we'll talk about that in a second. But before we move on, Veghead has done for us another theme song.
Yes, he has. He's come through once again.
This is, I think Veghead is like Weird Al Yankovic talented in terms of theme songs and the ability to kind of make a funny song. And this one is excellent. It really is. And he made some shorter versions. This one is a little long, but it's funny. So we're going to play the whole version for you this week because it's good. And this is the theme song for the Cooking with Dino segments, which we have on. We're going to play the whole thing. We think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, and in future weeks we'll play the shorter versions.
Yeah, he made us a couple short versions. We'll play the different versions. This is the full mix. So I hope you're ready for it, because here it is.
Dino, we who cook with Dino are the luckiest people in the world. And Quentin Tarantino, he's got nothing on Dino, nor does Rudolph Valentino, or that one guy from Married with Children, David Faustino. And let's not forget Ben Vereen. Oh, vegans are very special people. They're the meatlessest people in the world. Let's get cooking. This guy is so good looking. So now our cast iron skillets are treated and our ovens are all preheated. Throw away that fake meat, it'd bring out the vicious wrath of Dino. Vegan freaks love Dino, 'cause he sure can cucino. Grazie, Dino. Molto squisito.
All right, and there you go. That is a song that, the only song perhaps that Dino loves, because he's a diva and the song's about him.
Yes, it is.
Otherwise, he hates music. So.
Veghead, you fucking rock.
He does. Veghead has a unique talent for the addictive.
Yeah, and he PM'd me later on, and he goes, I hated that original song anyway, so I didn't mind butchering it.
I like the end in the Italian, the ciao, Dino. And all that. It's great.
I am molto bene.
Molto bene. So, well, welcome again to the show, Dino.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
We've got a couple questions for you this week.
Yes, we do.
Related ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have a question from Rat Girl?
Yeah, I have a question from Rat Girl. My sweet, humble Dino, hee hee. I love to cook and obviously do more now. I'm humble, right? I obviously do more now that I'm vegan, which is a great thing. One thing I just realized is that I need some advice on what spices to have on hand at all times. What do you suggest? My spice rack is way too lean. I don't want to spend lots of money on spices, though my co-op has a great selection in bulk, so I don't have to buy expensive prepackaged containers. Little sidebar note, that is a very, very, very good thing. You want to buy your spices from a reputable spice dealer instead of going to the prepackaged ones, because you don't know how long those prepackaged ones have been sitting on that shelf and in shipping. Anyway, however, I want to be able to spice appropriately at any time given. Thanks for your advice. Love you, Rat Girl.
Excellent. And we have actually a related question from Vegan Hobbit Girl who says, a lot of times, whether or not you're using a cookbook, you go to the spice rack and realize you're out of something. How do you choose spices to substitute? So a lot of spice questions this week. It's really good.
Yes, those are both excellent questions. And I thought I'd go into a rough guesstimate as to a vegan survival kit on your pantry.
Great idea.
Okay, so you always want to have cumin just because it's so versatile. You can use it in pretty much anything.
You wanted seeds or ground?
Seeds, preferably, because you can always grind it later. Ground spices are fine, but it is preferable to get the whole ones, because as soon as you start grinding them, it's like a little ticking time bomb that they've started to release their essential oils, and it's going to start losing its punch really quickly.
I found this to be the case, too, because there's a recipe where sometimes I get lazy, and it calls for a garam masala, and I will sometimes make my own, and it's so much better, freshly ground up from all the various spices, and then if you use that kind of shit that's in a little tub or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I can most radically see what you're talking about.
Yes, and actually that vodcast about me grinding the coriander seeds, it's so amazing, that smell. It's just wafting up from the mortar and pestle, and you can smell it as you're grinding it, and it's not even that much I was using. I was barely using like a teaspoon, and I'm grinding it, and I'm holding it away from me, and I can still smell it so powerfully.
Yeah, well, let's remind people that there's a vodcast out there that is at veganfreaks.net/vodcast, and there's some stuff with us up there, but lately Dino's been stocking the vodcast directory pretty well with the first thing you just talked about, which was grinding coriander, and then there's a most recent one, which is what?
Mango.
All about mango.
We love mango.
We love mango, so.
Yes, including the mango on our forums.
So there you go.
Indeed.
Good point. So... a subscriber as well.
Ah, yes.
So,
oh, very cool.
So we especially love her.
Yes.
But yeah, the other thing is, while you're talking about spices, I think that it's worth talking about the differences that one can get in the final taste of a ground spice when the spice is lightly toasted versus raw.
Oh, very, very, very good point. I always like to roast my spices before I grind them because the essential oils heat up, and as soon as you start heating them up, it gives you more and more flavor. And again, as you're roasting them, you're going to be able to smell it. Now, a lot of people seem to think that it's difficult and that it's complex to roast a spice. It's really not.
That's
All
easy.
you have to do is get a small saucepan and sprinkle in your spices, turn on the stove to medium-high heat. You don't want to get it too hot because you might burn them. Turn it up to medium-high heat and gently roast them over that medium flame. Now, if you have an electric stove, it's more difficult to control the heat, so you're probably going to end up taking the pan off of the stove a couple of times to cool it down a bit before, continuing on, so that you can control the heat that's going to the spices. Then, when it's done heating through, you let it cool down to room temperature, throw it in your spice grinder, and give it a whirl.
Nice.
Excellent.
So to get
So
back...
easy.
To get back to the question of what spices one should have on hand. So cumin was the first one you talked about.
Cumin was number one, big one. Number two is I always like to have a dried Italian seasoning on hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, technically I should be using fresh herbs in everything. However, after a while, herbs can get expensive if you use them as much as I do, and I do use them in everything. So... just to have on hand, in case, let's say I'm making a marinara sauce and I want to flavor it really quickly, I just grab my dried spices, rub them between my palms to release the oils, and then dump it into the pot, and immediately it takes it to a different world altogether.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we've got cumin, we've got Italian herb mix. What else?
Yes. Number 3, of course, is kosher salt. Duh, that's easy. There's a difference between kosher salt and table salt. Kosher salt is not processed as much as table salt is. There's no added anti-clumping agents, and there's no iodine or anything else added to it. It's just real salt.
Okay, so we've got salt in there. What else?
Black pepper, the whole one, not the ground one.
Right.
You always want to have whole black peppercorns. Now, if you want to bash them up really quickly and you don't have a fancy mortar and pestle like I do, throw them into a Ziploc bag and take a wine bottle and just run it over a couple of times and it'll get ground up nice.
Well, that's a good idea.
Good idea.
Again, that's in a pinch. Next one would be sesame seeds. I love the flavor of sesame seeds, and they give little bursts of nutty flavor when you're eating them.
Nutty flavor.
Nuts. Anyway.
Yeah. Actually, yesterday in chat, I was telling someone that they could suck my left one because I was angry about something, and they said then we might get nut butter. Okay, sorry, that was disgusting.
Bob keeps me well fed on nut milk and nut butter.
Anyway, yes, moving on.
Yeah, sesame seeds, there are 3 different varieties of them. The regular white sesame seeds that you get in a supermarket are fine. The black ones are pretty, and the brown ones that are lighter are also very good, but it's just get the regular stuff. It's really no need to go all that fancy if we're talking about basics here.
Nice. And anything else in there you would like to throw in?
Always have ground red chilies and ground turmeric.
I agree.
Yes.
Completely agree.
Because, again, you may think that you don't like hot food, but chances are you've had overly hot food.
There's no such thing.
Well, not for us, but there's some people who have actual taste buds left over in their mouth. And for them, you want to add chilies because it does give an extra dimension. It has a little bit of a smoky flavor, and it has that heat that it does bring to the party. So you want to go sort of light on it first, and then slowly increase it as your tolerance increases.
Cool.
That's a good point.
Aside from those, I would strongly recommend, it's not a necessity, but I would strongly recommend having on hand ground cinnamon.
Ah, yes. Always
just
useful.
because it's so versatile in so many different dishes. And ground cloves and ground nutmegs, those 3 spices make any dish taste North Indian.
Nice. Plus, they're
when you're sautéing.
They're very handy for baking too. The combination of those 3. Yeah. And sometimes we like to buy, for example, turmeric that you have to buy ground.
Yes.
We buy it in pretty large quantities just because it's really cheap. So how do I keep it from just losing all its flavor and going off?
But can I add something?
Do the same thing with the freezer thing.
Can I add something though?
Yeah, go ahead.
You don't have to buy turmeric ground though, right? You can buy fresh turmeric.
Yeah, but how many of us can find fresh turmeric?
If we could find it.
Yeah, well, not anywhere here.
Yeah, but I'm a 3-hour drive away from a co-op, you fucker.
Actually, well, see, what Bob fails to mention is that we had to drive 3.5 hours to go to the co-op that had fresh turmeric.
It's true.
You bitch. Spoiled bastard.
I'm not spoiled. We didn't drive particularly to go buy fresh turmeric. I mean, come on. We were there.
We were there. Hot. Making a road trip to buy spices. Oh my god, I'd be so all over that.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
as a luxury item, if you want to have something special every now and then, I would recommend getting saffron, but as a once in a while thing. Not like an everyday thing, but like there's nothing better than saffron rice. I can't compare that flavor to anything else.
That's true. That is good.
And if you're only buying it once in a while, it's not going to break the bank. I mean, it's a treat type of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, you can buy pretty small quantities of that too, so that's nice.
Exactly. You get them at the grocery store now for like $1.50 for a small container, and that's enough to spice a pot of rice.
It's really easy to overdo it with saffron too.
It is, but it's a nice treat to have once in a while, and it'll make all your Omni friends jealous when you bring it into work and microwave it.
That's true.
They'll be like, what's that wonderful smell? And you're here chowing down on basmati rice with vegetables and saffron and all these other beautiful, beautiful spices, and they're eating a pasty white
piece of shit
bread thing.
Yep.
Piece of flesh.
You can't call it bread because it's like a bread-like product.
That's true.
Yep.
I don't know. What else?
Other than that, I mean, if you keep those spices on hand at all times and keep yourself stocked with it, you're probably not going to have too many issues. However, if you do need to do on-the-fly substitutions, if you don't have coriander, cumin will sit in for it, and vice versa. If you don't have rosemary and marjoram, thyme works equally well. And if you don't have Italian seasoning, basil, rosemary, thyme, oregano works really well.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Tonight I would like to have for dinner. We've got some rice here, you know, and I'll make that on the side. but I would like to make dal for dinner. We have tur dal here.
Oh, tur dal. Excellent stuff.
We have. And I want to make a dal. So what would I do? What would you recommend? I have my own recipe, but I want to hear yours.
The tur dal or the urad?
Oh, well, why don't we talk about the urad dal first?
Urad dal is that white one, right?
Yeah, a little tiny one.
I generally tend not to cook with that one as a dal itself. I tend to use it in dosa. And actually, the other thing is that I tend to use urad dal as a spice, not as a dal.
Right, and kind of fried in at the frying stage, right? All right. So if I was going, if I were going to make tur dal, let's say, what would I do?
If you're making the tur dal, what I do is I'd cook it first, like in a separate pot. Dice up an onion really fine, get some ginger, grate that up really fine, get some garlic, dice that up really fine, and possibly curry leaves if you have them still. And I swear I will mail them out to you someday, Bob.
That's okay. Tofu Punk has been good to us.
Excellent.
She's been sending us curry leaves. That's okay, Dino.
Okay. And for the spices, you're going to be using mustard seeds, cumin seeds, and the urad dal and the curry leaves.
That's pretty much what we do already.
In essence. And
damn, I was looking for something different.
Okay, and when you boil the tur dal, throw in 1 or 2 leaves of bay leaf. And when you're sautéing your onions, sprinkle in that triumvirate that I told you about: the nutmeg, the cinnamon, and the clove. Wow, I can't talk today.
That's what I will do.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Because it gives it a whole different dimension. And this time, instead of using the mustard seeds and asafoetida like you normally would, leave those out altogether because they taste horribly wrong in North Indian food.
All right.
Yeah. And if you have it, a little bit of cardamom powder also goes a long way.
We do, indeed.
Just a little tiny sprinkling. But those are the basis of a good garam masala, so you're going to have a nice flavor base to work from.
So that would be a North Indian variety?
That would be a very North Indian variety.
Now, what if I want to do the South Indian variety?
If you want to do the strictly South Indian one, you're going to go with just the mustard seeds, cumin seeds, coriander seeds, and asafoetida, turmeric, and curry leaves.
Cool.
Wow, I'm rattling this off like really fast. Also,
yeah, you are
really
talking
big
fast,
difference. A big difference between North Indian and South Indian food is that North Indian food tends to have a little bit more salt and a little bit more fat than South Indian. South Indian tends to be a little bit more watery and more like you have more of the bean sauce gravy thingy to be playing with, versus North Indian that's going to be a thicker and more fatty version.
Right.
So if you are using the North Indian recipe, add more oil than you think you'll need.
All right.
And actually, if you have it, use shortening instead of oil because it does give it a better flavor.
Oh, sweet Jesus. You have a heart attack.
Huh?
Oh, you have a heart attack, man.
Well, it's better than fucking ghee.
I try not to eat that shit.
Well, fuck you too. No, actually, it's the thing to mention about the shortening is that it's not the same as butter, because, and it's not the same as margarine because margarine has partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, whereas vegetable shortening is completely hydrogenated vegetable oil, so you don't have the trans fat issues.
But it's still fat at room temperature.
It's not good for you.
Yeah,
it's really, really bad for you. It's like evil stuff. But my God, it tastes so good.
I hear you.
I can't stop myself. I'm like, okay, I swear, I'm going to use only peanut oil, and I'm only going to use a couple of tablespoons, and I'm like, yeah, but that shortening tub is looking so lonely there all by himself.
What oil should people cook with mostly? I mean, if they're cooking a variety of things.
Yes, exactly. And if you're...
No, what oil should people use?
Technically, you can use canola oil in anything, but I feel like canola doesn't have that much flavor.
Right.
So for myself, I tend to use sesame oil and peanut oil for Indian cooking. Safflower works really well, but when I say sesame oil, I don't mean the dark stuff from the Chinese food store. I'm talking about the regular sesame oil.
Right, the clear stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of yellowy, right?
It's kind of yellowy, and it doesn't taste the same at all as the darker toasted sesame oil that you get in the Asian food markets.
Cool.
Yeah, and also, if you're nervous about using shortening, just amp up the amount of oil that you're adding to the pan, and you'll be fine. You need that rich creaminess on your tongue.
Very nice.
Just like nut milk.
Anything else to add there, Dino?
Most definitely add tomatoes to the sauté because they kind of break down and they form a sauce base.
Excellent. Anything else to add to this segment, Dino?
Yes, and one more thing is that when you're adding tomato paste to anything, saute it with the onion, not with the rest of the food.
Okay.
Because you want to kind of semi-cook it in the fat before you add the rest of your ingredients. And also, if you're making anything with tomato in it, throw in a splash of vodka because it really brings out flavors that you never even realized existed.
Huh. Wow, that sounds good.
I'll have to try that.
Also, in your dal tonight, add carrots along with the onions when you're sauteing them.
Okay, we'll do.
Again, one more flavor component that we're building on.
Very nice. I'll let you know how it turns out.
This sounds good. This is already sounding good, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm kind of hungry. I just ate lunch and I'm hungry.
Cool. I have a pot of that stuff sitting in my fridge right now, so that's why I'm able to describe it so well.
Wow, sounds good.
All right, Dino. Well, thank you so much for being on yet again. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Dino, you can send him an email. Or
diva@veganfreak.com.
diva@veganfreak.com. Or you can send an email to us at podcast@veganfreak.com. We'll make sure Dino gets it some way or another.
Yes.
And I don't know.
And I certainly hope you guys keep experimenting with your food because I want you guys to try new things and tell me about it.
There you go.
Excellent.
So try new stuff. You see something weird in the grocery store and it's vegan, try it.
Like those onion sandwiches I had the other day.
Onion sandwiches.
It sounds horribly gross, and I only do it when I'm alone because I don't want to annoy the crap out of everyone. But
Okay.
I had this beautiful, fluffy, thick pita bread that I picked up from a local dollar store that was kosher parv. So I'm like, all right, why don't I use it? Sliced the pita bread in half, and then I threw it in the toaster to get it warm. And then I took it out of the toaster, spread on some hummus, sliced up some onions really, really, really thin, and laid them in the center. Closed up the sandwich and spread on a little bit of oil on both sides. Then I threw it back in the toaster oven and toasted it for 2 cycles and took it out, and then I cut them into 4s, and it was so crusty on the outside and warm and toasty on the inside, and the onions were crisp and slightly cooked, and the hummus kind of like made this sort of it's so hard to describe, but it was so good.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, and it was so easy too.
Man, that sounds really good.
3 ingredients, throw it in the oven, eat it.
That's awesome. Holy crap. I'm hungry now.
I know, and everybody's listening to this is now hungry, I'm sure.
And if you have the patience to do it, when you take it out of the oven, you can open up the sandwich again, throw in some tomato, throw in some cucumber, maybe some lettuce and arugula, watercress, whatever you want, and make like a really hefty sandwich.
Cool. Well, thanks, Dino.
Hungry yet?
Definitely.
Of course.
That's my point.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Another 2 weeks from now, we'll have Dino back on again. And thanks for all the good advice, Dino. And don't forget to send me your questions.
Yeah, send me your questions and I'll make you hungry some more.
All right. Thanks, Dino. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
So that was our segment with Dino.
Hope you learned a lot about spices.
Indeed. And he's got some video up on our vlog or whatever you call it, vodcast at veganfreaks.net/vodcast.
Okay.
So you can go there and see some of Dino with his shaved head.
Yeah.
I meant to shout out to Dino because he shaved his head for us.
That's true. He did.
He shaved his head so he wouldn't have to spend $40 a month on hair care products, and he could afford in his budget to subscribe to the podcast. So if he can shave his head for us, come on now. No. So here's what we got going on now. We'll have Dino back again in a couple weeks. We'll have Nell on again for another one of her reviews of vegan wines next week.
Yeah.
And but for right now, what we have going on is we've got Melanie Joy coming up. We thought we should play a song first. We thought this song was appropriate. This is by Bikini Kill, and it's called Liar.
Liar, liar, you got your pants on fire. Liar, liar, and you
All right, so that was Liar from Bikini Kill.
I love that song.
I do too. I took that in last week. I think I played that for my students.
They must have flipped.
I took the iPod and I plugged it into the stereo in the classroom because we have it's classroom stereo and speakers in it. And I played it and I started laughing when I began to play it because I thought, man, they're gonna freak when they hear this. So they were like listening and they're like looking at me, like, what the fuck is this you put on? And then it gets to the part where it's the give peace a chance and she's screaming and they're all looking at me like, you listened to this for fun? I said, yeah, I do. So it was pretty funny. I actually think that song's a really good one to play this week.
Yes, it is.
Because there's this line in there. I mean, well, there's the eat meat, hate blacks, beat your fucking wife line, right? Which is trying to compare all these oppressions, obviously. But then there's the other one about live your life in denial. You live your life in denial.
Yeah, but the whole thing, the eat meat, hate blacks, beat your fucking wife, it's all the same thing.
Exactly.
That's the most important point.
Indeed it is. So I like that. I like the song, and I like what I like about it also is that it really just targets this whole idea of living your life in denial. And living your life in denial of what's right in front of you. And I think that this interview is a lot about that.
It is indeed.
And that's why I wanted to play that song this week.
Good idea.
This interview, we need to give a little disclaimer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do.
Okay.
I think we got a little academic.
Yeah, I think we did.
But I think it's a great interview.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Her work is really interesting.
I think Melanie's work is very interesting. But for those of you that, I don't know, I kind of get into this academic mode when I talk to other academics. It's like if two car mechanics sit down and they talk about mechanics, and I just get into this like, boom, academic mode. Sometimes I get into that like academic debatey kind of mode, and I don't know, I get myself into some trouble sometimes because I don't know, people don't like it. But I think we get a little academic, but I still think the interview is very good, and I think it's worth listening to. I don't want you to be scared off by that, but I do want to say this is a little more, generally a little more serious than most of our interviews are. So, with further ado, we will just let this interview roll.
Okay, we're here with Dr. Melanie Joy, who is a professor at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, and she teaches psychology and sociology. And she's also coming up with a book. It's due out in early 2007 called Strategic Action for Animals. It'll be published by Lantern Press. So welcome, Melanie.
Hi, thank you.
Your research is on the psychology of meat eating, and before we get into the study that you did, the big study, you talk about in some of your articles about how most people realize that veganism or vegetarianism is an ideology, and it's in opposition to the status quo. But you also talk about how meat eating is an ideology, but we don't really realize it. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, Carnism is the word that I started using several years ago to denote the ideology of meat consumption. And ideologies have such enormous power to shape our attitudes and behaviors and are often so embedded in society that their influence is mostly unconscious, and therefore they remain unquestioned. And typically ideologies are only recognized when they're an exception to the, quote, normal way of thinking, or the dominant ideology, which is exactly why, as you pointed out, there's a name for vegetarianism and not necessarily a name for meat consumption. And the dominant ideology in our society maintains that eating other animals is normal and natural and necessary. This is something that I refer to as the 3 N's of justification, which have been used, interestingly, to support countless destructive ideologies and practices, from African slavery to the Nazi Holocaust. And because there's no name for the dominant meat-eating ideology, we end up viewing eating animals not as a choice, but as a given. And this way of thinking reinforces the dominant assumption that the consumption of animals is ethical and legitimate. And what's interesting about this is that ideologies can actually hide contradictions between people's behaviors and their values. So they allow people to make exceptions to what they would normally consider ethical without even realizing it. And this is how we can understand Carnism. If we consider Carnism an ideology, then it can help explain why it's possible, for instance, to love some animals and eat others.
That's great. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, actually what I like about when I was reading some of your stuff was that it reminds me a lot of what critical race theorists did in terms of considering whiteness as an ideology, because in our society, whiteness goes so unnoticed, and whiteness is, in fact, an ideological construct. And I'm wondering if you think that, I'm wondering if you could maybe talk about what kinds of, how power is kind of challenged by examining these ideologies and kind of breaking them apart a little bit.
Oh, that's a really good question. the way that we understand power is an ideology in and of itself. And when we look at a competitive power paradigm, we can see that the ideologies that exist within that are structured really to support an exploitive status quo. And I look at language as playing a huge role in really raising consciousness around how ideologies have the power to shape our assumptions, behaviors, and feelings. So, for instance, if we were to refer to eating an animal, if somebody were sitting down and had a plate of chicken in front of them and said, "I'm eating something," or someone rather than something, it would have a significantly different effect on them. Which is why I think it's important to really start naming the dominant meat-eating ideologies, so that we can really start having conversations around the fact that eating other animals is not a given. It's a choice.
Yeah, I
think it's a choice based on a set of assumptions that are not espoused by everybody.
That's true. I think that's really important. And in fact, I know a lot of vegans who refuse to call, chicken or beef or whatever, they'll when they talk about it, they mention the fact that it is, a dead animal. Oh, that's a dead animal skin you're wearing. They won't they won't actually say it's leather.
Yeah, in fact, just today in class, I was talking to my students, and I talked about eating animal flesh, and they seemed kind of, like they were repulsed by the idea. And this one girl said, "Well, you don't use euphemisms when you talk about eating meat." And I said, "Well, because to me, it, in a sense, it's eating someone. So I like that movement away from a something and into a someone."
Yeah, and there's a really delicate balance in terms of when and how often to use euphemisms. So Carol Adams wrote a wonderful book called Living Among Meat Eaters, and I think it was in that book where she points out how it's very important not to talk about or to really challenge euphemisms or the social construction of meat while people are eating meat. And I think the same goes for, while people are wearing leather, for instance, simply or largely because it's easy for people to become so defensive that we have to really tread very carefully when we're talking about carnism and when we're talking about issues that people are so highly defended against.
Yeah, that's really a good point. And after reading your research, I realized it's mostly because, like you said, it's a socialized behavior and it's an assumption. And in order to deal with that assumption, that they have to go through something that you call psychic numbing. Can you explain to our listeners what that is?
Yeah. Well, in my own research, I found that certain ways of thinking support carnism, and the phenomenon that I studied is psychic numbing. And psychic numbing can be understood as the separation of thoughts from feelings and of beliefs from practices. It was first formally studied by Robert J. Lifton, who's a psychiatrist, who wanted to understand how the Nazi doctors, who were, men who had taken the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, could basically spend their days murdering Jews and then return home to their families as seemingly normal husbands and fathers. He coined this term psychic numbing, which he determined allows people to participate in practices that they would otherwise seriously, disturb them. And to do this without experiencing any apparent discomfort. But one thing that's important to point out is that psychic numbing is not always a negative phenomenon. It can be either adaptive, which, useful or constructive, or maladaptive, destructive. And it can be considered adaptive, or I consider it adaptive, when we use it to cope with or respond to violence, as opposed to when we use it to enable violence. And I think that's a really important distinction. So, for instance, trauma survivors will use psychic numbing in order to cope with their victimization. We all use psychic numbing every single day in order to get in a car and drive, 60 or 70 or 80 miles an hour down the highway next to other people who are doing the same thing. If we didn't, we wouldn't be able to function. So it's used by victims, and it's also used by perpetrators. And this includes those who are participating in violence secondhand, which are people who are participating in something like meat consumption. And what I did for my dissertation was I interviewed carnists and meat cutters in order to explore how specifically psychic numbing was used to enable meat consumption and production. And what I found was that their psychic numbing was expressed through a variety of defense mechanisms. And the most notable of them include, for instance, denial, which is expressed in the assumption that animals don't really suffer when being raised and killed for meat. I found very low levels of denial. I think most people today, because of exposés, are fairly conscious of the fact that animals who are raised and killed for meat do not have, comfortable lives by any stretch. They also express this through justification. For instance, they would assume that it's acceptable to eat certain animals because they're bred for that purpose. Avoidance, don't tell me that, you'll ruin my meal. Something called dichotomization, which you can consider a form of like compartmentalization. I think of some animals as companions and some as food. So I would never eat a squirrel, I would never eat a monkey, I'd never eat a cat, but I have no problem eating, chickens and cows. And dissociation, which is really the heart of psychic numbing. Dissociation is really, it's what people use with all of the other defenses. It's always along with another defense. Basically, dissociation is expressed through the idea when I look at meat, I don't connect with it. I don't connect it with an animal. And if I did, I would be disgusted and unable to eat it. A big part of what I studied was the disgust response. And what I found was when people's dissociation was reduced or eliminated, they became disgusted and incapable of eating meat.
So I think a lot of us, deal with these kinds of things in our day-to-day lives just, by being the vegan at the table and talking to someone who's eating meat. And, they either don't want to know about it and they tell you they don't want to know about it, or they sort of, if you do tell them about it, they sort of shut off and then they're able to eat it anyway. And I think a lot of us wonder, how in the world can people know about it and still eat it?
Yeah, I have an example, actually. I teach a class right now on animal rights issues, and we've been watching films, and so many students in the class are evidencing exactly that thing where they are showing a disgust response and they're making the connection between a meat and an animal. But I have one student in the class who is very adamant, that he's seen it and he's fine with it and he has no problem with it. He thinks that there are much greater injustices in the world and he's happy to continue eating meat. And other students in the class find this so difficult to deal with, and I, at a personal level, find it really hard to deal with. How does that happen?
I think I can't answer that definitively. Different people have different ways of responding, different levels of emotional connection that they're comfortable making. I think it's important for vegans and vegetarians to really be careful about, where we choose to focus our efforts and who we choose to advocate to. And, if 99% of a class is open to talking about animal rights issues, they're the people who are probably best to be advocating to. Maybe not in the classroom, but, if we're out there advocating. And also, given the fact that defenses are so strong around eating meat, like I said before, we have to be so careful about how we approach the issue. So, for instance, I never talk about carnism when people are with me eating meat. And when I do, I generally describe my own experience as becoming a vegetarian or becoming a vegan, or my own experience as a vegan and what that means to me and why I made those choices that I've made, because people are more comfortable seeing my world through my eyes. It's like in the I don't know if you're familiar with the film The Witness with Eddie Lama. People can connect with, once you have a rapport with people and they feel safe enough with you and they know that they're not going to be judged by you, they can connect with your world and your worldview in a different way. Eddie Lama allowed people to see his world through his eyes, and he really made a connection. People were really able to identify him as like a man of the people. And so, I find that creating an atmosphere where there isn't this us versus them mentality, vegetarian versus carnist, and really viewing carnists as victims of the carnistic system. Perhaps secondhand victims. They're not necessarily the direct victims like the animals are, but victims nonetheless. Speaking to them on that level is, I find that it's much more useful.
Yeah. A lot of your work can definitely inform how we can deal with carnists, with meat eaters every day. So besides seeing the world through our eyes, is there anything else that your research suggests as to, suggestions for everyday vegans as to how they should deal with meat eaters?
Well, I think we need to really deal with ourselves as well as dealing with meat eaters. I think it's really important that we feel, secure and grounded in our own ideological choices, and open to other ways of thinking and other ways of being. Because if not, we come across as dogmatic and judgmental, and rigidly defensive of our stance. And it's really important for us to remember most of us were not born vegan. Most of us spent a lot of our lives eating other animals, and it's easy to forget that. And it's easy to forget that carnists continue to eat meat for a lot of different reasons, some of which are very valid. The carnistic system works, very, very hard to ensure that it has carnists to support it, and it does this largely through using fear. It makes people, there are billions of dollars, millions, billions of dollars spent on carnistic marketing campaigns to, make people afraid of becoming vegetarian, stereotyping vegetarians as weak, making people feel that if they stop eating meat, they're going to get sick. And, and also to remember that it's making the shift from eating animals to not eating animals is not simply about changing one's diet. It's about changing your entire way of perceiving your world and yourself and your relationship to the world and other beings on this planet. So it takes a lot more than a simple decision to just step away from eating meat. And even if, some of us were able to do that, not everybody makes choices and changes in the same way. So I think understanding defensiveness and being able to set an atmosphere where people don't have their defenses raised, which means being non-judgmental, because these defenses exist for a reason, and the reason they exist is to protect people from the sense of guilt and what's referred to as cognitive moral dissonance that they would feel if they really allowed themselves to be aware of the fact that they were participating in an act of violence that's antithetical probably to their own value system. And to really avoid reinforcing any sense of guilt or cognitive moral dissonance and create an atmosphere of non-judgmentality and, and understanding. And I've seen people, respond very, very well. And very often, people will come to approach me and say, oh, you're vegan. Why did you decide to become vegan? And that's a wonderful, opportunity to share my experience. Hopefully in a way that they can hear without feeling attacked or like they have to defend their choices.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving beyond the interpersonal level, though, what kind of activism would this entail? What would this mean for the movement? I mean, what kinds of campaigns or what kinds of activism would be appropriate given what you're talking about here?
That's a really that's an excellent question, and I do address this to some degree in my book. I think that all of our campaigns, all of our anti-meat campaigns, really need to be piercing dissociation. It's the dissociation that allows people to continue eating meat, or to at least feel comfortable eating meat, and to really always make that connection: meat, animal, and also to really highlight, this notion that carnists are allies and not opponents. That carnists, that the people who are participating in the system and perpetuating the system are in fact being manipulated into doing this, and are, very disempowered by the system. So as long as we see carnism and promote that, we're going to be creating this us versus them mentality, and I think our campaigns can really help to unify vegetarians, vegans, and carnists.
But in a way, though, I mean, in a sense, that argument kind of reminds me of the almost of the false consciousness argument, and it almost removes what I think is some agency from the whole process. And people are making these choices, and I think a lot of people do know. And I guess that's where the cognitive dissonance would play in. But still, my only concern is that maybe that takes a little bit. Maybe it makes it a little bit too easy to be a carnist in a sense.
Too easy to be a carnist because people don't feel responsible for their choices?
Well, in a sense, yeah, we're maybe not making them. I think one of the dangers I would, as I understand what you're saying, and I haven't read a lot of what you've written, but one of the dangers I would read into that would be, well, if we're viewing them simply as victims of a system, right? Are we perhaps removing some question of agency that's going on there? Because people are, in fact, making these choices, and some of them are making them with fairly full knowledge of what goes on.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point. It's a really excellent point. I'm not suggesting that carnists are solely victims. I'm suggesting that carnists are both secondhand victims and secondhand perpetrators. And they're somewhere in the gray area. But I think that if we approach them as solely perpetrators, we're going to approach them in a way that reinforces rather than challenges carnistic defenses.
That's a great point.
People do not, in our society particularly, we do not identify with perpetrators. We do not identify ourselves as perpetrators even when we are. I mean, if you think about any Hollywood movie, we're asked to identify with either the victim or the hero, but we never take the perspective of the perpetrator, unless the perpetrator is also a victim. And I think that's a really good indication of how difficult it is for people to identify their own participation in violence. And so, simply in terms of strategic advocacy, I think approaching people from the perspective, not that they're perpetrators, but that they are victims who have been, encouraged to participate in something that has made them, to some degree, perpetrators. I think that it's a more effective way of approaching them.
That's a great answer. Yeah, that's really insightful, actually.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Definitely. And we've been talking about meat eaters, but in past episodes of our show, we've sort of been thinking out loud as how could anyone ever work in a slaughterhouse or do something where they're directly involved in the murder? They're not removed from it; they're directly involved in it. And I know that there are a lot of social things going on there. The immigration and the immigrant workers and they needing a job. But are these same forces at work in some place like a slaughterhouse?
I would argue yes, and that it's a matter of degree. Now, I haven't interviewed a lot of slaughterhouse workers, so I can't say that definitively. One of my interviewees was from Africa and had, in fact, killed his own animals. And I did see exactly the same psychological mechanisms that, in use, except that he used objectification, which is turning a living being into an object, whereas meat consumers, carnists, didn't use objectification because they didn't need to because the animal had already been turned into an object for them. So it was a matter of, how much distancing was necessary, or psychological distancing was necessary. And he told me, when I asked him about his experience slaughtering his own animals, he said, well, we'd have chickens, for example, we'd keep them in a pen that was far away from the house. We wouldn't let them too close, and we could never give them a name. And so there were these distancing, these ways that he kept himself distant. And I would argue that for, in Robert J. Lifton's work, he actually referred to a process as doubling, which is a more extreme form of psychic numbing when somebody actually needs to step into almost an altered consciousness in order to carry out more extreme acts of violence. And I would assume that slaughterhouse workers would need to use some level of that. And also routinization is a defense mechanism that I hadn't described, but it's when somebody does the same routine over and over and over again, they get so desensitized that they stop feeling. And all of my meat cutters who I interviewed, told me that when they started working with animals, working with meat, that they were disgusted by the blood, that they were disturbed by what they were experiencing. They would avoid dealing with animals that came in, dead animals that came in with their heads on, but after doing it over and over and over again, they got desensitized enough so that it stopped bothering them.
I think I only have really one more question. It just came up as you were talking about some of the stuff, and we have a lot of parents who listen, and a lot of parents who are trying to raise their kids vegan and maybe consciously think about not rearing them in a kind of carnist lifestyle or a carnist ideology. And I guess the question I would have is, what kinds of things can a parent do, given that, granted the home is a site of ideological reproduction without a doubt, but kids are going to leave the house, and what kinds of things can parents do to kind of help make sure that that the children that they're raising kind of don't get too deeply inculcated into this particular ideology?
Wow, that's an excellent question. Just simply given the particular ideology being veganism.
Well, that
you're referring to.
Well, the ideology that they can stick with would be veganism, but so they don't get too caught up in the kind of carnist mentality. So there's this kind of clash between the outside that's carnist and the inside kind of family life that's vegan, and how to deal with that clash, and maybe some I don't know,
I found that children respond very well when they're allowed to be, agents, subjects of their own lives, agents of their own process, when they're explained the reasons why choices are being made, rather than just told that certain choices are necessary. And really, when I've talked to children, and I taught in the public schools for a while, and when children were aware of, for example, why I was vegetarian, why veganism exists, they were very eager to, participate. Actually, they wanted to stop eating meat, and the problem was that their parents didn't want them to. So, I'm always a proponent of having open dialogue with children so that they have a consciousness around choices and are also given some freedom within their own ideology to make choices, so that they do feel like they're agents of their lives and are not going to rebel against what they feel is perhaps a restrictive lifestyle for them.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of the parents worry about, is that they're going to go rebel and they're out with their friends and they want to eat meat. So I think that's great advice. Thank you. Well, I think that's all we have for today, and we want to thank you so much for taking the time for talking with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really.
Oh, thank you too.
It was an amazing conversation, actually. So.
Oh well, thank both of you too. I'm really, I'm really thrilled to be able to be talking about this with both of you.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I mentioned I was chatting with some friends last night, and I told them that we were going to be talking to you today, and I told them what you research on, and they were really interested. So I think we should have a lot of people that are going to be really interested in this interview. So.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much.
All right, so that was our interview with Melanie Joy. We'd like to thank her for spending some time with us and talking about the psychology of meat eating and carnism, and we thought that was really interesting.
We really appreciate it, and we did get a little academic, but it was good, though.
Yeah, definitely.
You should go check out her book when it comes out.
Yeah,
I'm sure it'll be very informative, and she had some really unique insight into the ways in which the kind of but psychological gymnastics that are involved to eat meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically what I like about it is that it flips the script in the sense that it puts meat eating as the, not abnormal, right? Mm-hmm. But it puts meat eating in a position of analysis, which is really important to do.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we often think of meat eating as the neutral position, is that nothing has to go on for you to eat meat. It just happens because it's tradition, it's what we do, right? But she turns the tables on you, like you just said, and we have to go through all of these processes to be able to eat meat. And so I think that us as vegans have broken out of that. It's really great.
Yeah, we have. And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've broken out of that, but also I think the nice thing about it is that, it's just a reconsideration, and it denaturalizes what seems to be a natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
We always assume that eating meat is natural, but in fact, this kind of, here we go, professor word, discourse, right? This kind of discourse actually gets us thinking about the ways in which it isn't natural, right? And denaturalizes, it essentially shows why meat eating is a political thing. And that's really important to know. I don't mean political. I keep hitting the mic stand. I can't help it. I grew up in Philly. I talk with my hands. Okay. So anyway, no, it shows why meat eating is a political choice. I don't mean political like in the way of Democrat, Republican political, right? Because, as our own Dottie Roy says, Democrat or Republican, it's like a choice between, tide or ivory snow. It's not a real choice. What I mean is political in the sense that there's kind of an ideology behind it. There are a bunch of choices behind it, and there's power in those choices.
Of course.
And if those things seem natural to us, anything that isn't that will seem unnatural. And so uncovering that is very important for understanding it and pulling it apart.
Definitely.
I feel like I'm in class now. Welcome to Class with Bob. So, yeah. So anyway, that's it for this week's show.
Yes, we're done for this week. And like we said earlier, we're going to have Nell on next week talking about her review of vegan wines, which should be really interesting.
Vegan wines, who can argue with that?
Yeah.
Vegan wine, wow. I know a good vegan wine. I'm tired of people bothering me.
So anyway, but you can write to us. podcast@veganfreak.com is our email address. You can visit our website, podcast.veganfreak.com. You can leave comments there. You can leave voice comments as well. Or you can call our voicemail line 267-295-1944. You can stop by our forums, stop by our chat, and say hi.
That's right. Please do stop by. We'd love to hear from people. We'd love to know that you're out there. And we do get back to your emails. Sometimes it takes us a while, though.
Yeah.
We get there, though.
So thanks again for listening.
Absolutely. And thanks to all the subscribers out there, too.
Yes. Thank you so much for all your support in every way. Podcast Alley, all that.
Yeah. Don't forget to vote. New month.
Yes, we love you, freakies.
We do indeed. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.